Now, the BBC has found itself in hot water with Number 10 over its failure to label militant group Hamas as terrorists in its reporting of the conflict in Israel and Gaza.
Joining us live now, legendary Sun columnist Rod Liddle, good friend of mine. Rob, thanks for joining us this morning. What do you, my friend, make of the BBC's decision here? Do you think they're right, or are they fence sitters who are not reading the room?
Well, they're not. They never read the room. They're incapable of doing so because they're so out of touch with the people who pay for their existence. I mean, this is it's a question of crass stupidity. It's not a case that in labelling Hamas terrorists that they're being partial. It's that they're being impartial in that they are the very definition of the word terrorist. I don't know how else you could describe last Saturday's attack upon Israel, apart from using the word terrorism. It's not partiality or bias towards Israel to call people who decapitate babies, who burn people alive, who invade a country in a terrorist manner. They are terrorists. And the big lie is that the BBC never uses the word terrorist. It does. You know, if there's a bomb attack in Britain or someone goes on a rampage stabbing people, then they use the word terrorist. They usually later say he's someone with mental problems, which is the usual way of putting it. But they nonetheless use the word terrorist. So they've dug themselves into this hole and continue digging. And I think it comes from a vague sympathy with the Palestinian cause, which permeates the BBC. You will remember Barbara Platt back in the early 2000s admitting that she cried when the terrorist Yasser Arafat was dying. You know, it is that kind of naive adherence to the Palestinian cause.
Rod, is that fair, though? Because first and foremost, we should have sympathy with any Palestinians who are innocent civilians in all of this, first and foremost. And then secondly, is it anti-Palestinian bias because they haven't done this with the IRA, they haven't done it with Nazis? Yes, they use the word terrorist, but they don't specifically say the IRA were a terrorist group.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they've called the real IRA terrorists before now. You know, this was an act of terrorism, and the government says it's an act of terrorism. I don't quite see what your point about having sympathy with the Palestinians in Gaza has to do with it. I'm saying the Palestinian cause is what they have sympathy with, which is a very different thing. Right. And they do use the word terrorist. And John Simpson, who rather pompously, for a wonderful correspondent, put out the statement saying that that the BBC did not rant and it did not use the word terrorist. He used the word terrorist about attacks on our own soil. You know, it's a non sequitur, and I think it would have been more useful if Tim Davie, who has a hell of a job on his hands, to try to shift the BBC back into a direction where it kind of accords with the values and aspirations of the people who pay for it.
I think that's the point, Rod, if you don't mind me jumping in. I think that we all know that television has changed, radio's changed, news media has changed. With that change, I think comes, you need to be responding, you need to be the voice, if you like, of the people who watch and listen. The big argument about the BBC licence fee, they can do what they want, we have to pay 160 quid, we all get a choice. And just don't think they're reading the room at all. And I think there's a real issue here. We've said it all week. We were all appalled by those atrocities. You outlined them. Nobody with a brain cell cannot be affected by what happened. And nobody with a brain cell wants a humanitarian situation where millions die. But underlined, this is caused by Hamas. Hamas are in Gaza with their buildings underneath hospitals, with people in tunnels as hostages. These people, I don't believe, represent the majority of Palestinians, and I have sympathy in that cause. But I also think it's fair to say that the BBC, I got told off by somebody from the Mirror for saying state broadcaster. I don't even understand that. They represent the United Kingdom. And in this, I don't think they do, Rod Liddle.
No, I don't think they do either. And just briefly on the Hamas question, I think they probably represent a majority of political opinion in Gaza. I mean, they have votes. I mean, I know they're probably not free and fair votes, but they do have votes there, and they regularly install Hamas and Islamic Jihad. I think the BBC has, for a long time, it's got real problems. It's got problems, obviously, from a purely point of view of modernity and technology, in that the model of a licence fee simply doesn't work anymore, and it knows that. And it's being outbid on all the big things which it used to do and is now go to other places. But its biggest problem is still a lack of diversity of opinion from within the BBC. It parrots the views of a liberal elite, which really doesn't have much purchase. Certainly not where I am, up in Teesside, just no purchase whatsoever.
Rod, whilst I am on your side, as it were, I completely agree with you. This, obviously Hamas are a terrorist group and should be called as such. However, I do understand the argument. One of the arguments coming from the BBC was that they have people on the ground in the area, and if they, the BBC, were calling Hamas a terrorist group, it could put roving reporters in danger on the ground. Also, why on earth is this being a topic that is so widely debated, particularly in Parliament? We are in a situation now where two states are at war, and we're tying ourselves in knots over the word terrorist. And I mean that from both sides, both
of
the
course,
BBC
Starmer was as
anti-BBC.
Starmer was as vocal as Sunak. I just don't think they read the damn room. When our government, our opposition, our royal family, and every single person knows that's terrorist, get on bloody board. Stop being different for the sake of being different. Rog, you said something then that I think could probably get me a pounding. Diversity of opinion would be interesting from the BBC. They've gone about diversity the whole time, but their opinions are always the same.
They do have diversity of opinion with the guests that they have, but they have to stay neutral.
No, hang on. They don't have diversity of opinion within their staff.
Yeah.
That's an enormous problem. Tim Davies accepted it.
Yeah.
And it's as true of the comedians as it is of the people who run the Today programme. They all think roughly the same thing. They don't even think it's political. They think it's simply being civilised and nice, and so it's so out of step with where the majority of the people are. Your argument about journalists being in danger, you can't have it both ways. You can't say we have to be brave and tell the truth in one voice, and then the next voice say, but we can't quite tell the truth because it might hurt our journalists. I don't believe that the journalists who the BBC has working there would object to the word terrorist being used about Hamas, to be absolutely honest. And I don't think it hugely raises the problems for them of being captured or subjected to violence by Hamas. They're likely to be subjected to that anyway. It's very brave of them to be there. But I think it's a non sequitur argument, again, which they've dragged up in order to excuse the fact that they're not doing what the majority of the public want. And you're right, I mean, we shouldn't really be talking about it because it's not that interesting. But they are the state broadcaster. I pay 165 quid a year or however much it is to watch this tribe,
Rod,
they're a public broadcaster.
can I just salute this man? I rang him at 7 o'clock last night. Will you come back next week, my friend? Loved having you on.
Thank you,
Rod. Thank you very much indeed, my friend. Rod Liddle there, Sun columnist and legend.